Hi everyone, welcome to Must Read Monday. My name is Dabney. I'm the young adult librarian with the Twin Lakes Libraries, and I use they, them pronouns. So February is Black History Month, so for this episode I am going to be talking to you all about some recently read books that are about Black history or that are by Black authors. So these are ones that I just read literally over the weekend. It's been a very book heavy weekend for me, and they're all great, and they're all in our collection. So behind me you'll see some of our nonfiction books. This is at the Hancock branch, and I've got some books up displayed that focus on Black history and Black authors. So some ones, like you've got the Black history book at the top, and then you've got some memoirs up here as well. Some more down here. We have Stamped, the young adult version that Jason Reynolds helped with. So all really good books to check out. And I'm also going to link our Black authors list on Goodreads with the video notes. And if you go over to the Mary Benson, which has our, the majority of our young adult collection on the shelves, I'm going to have a bunch of books by Black authors facing out on the ends of the shelf, so that can help you browse and pick things out. So go over there, check out some good books, or check out some of these books I'm going to talk to you all about. So first off, we're going to get started with some nonfiction. And yes, I read nonfiction. So proud of myself. These were all really good books. First up, we have Blackbirds in the Sky by Brandy, Colbert, and this is the story and legacy of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So this book also has pictures throughout, so definitely. I listened to an audiobook version of it, but I need to go back and look at the pictures. So I'm going to read you the little summary right here. Because if you're like me, you didn't learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre when you were in public school or whatever kind of school you went to. I feel like, and this is something that's talked about kind of in the afterword of this book, is that sometimes when you're learning about Black history in school, it's all kind of condensed down. You're not getting a whole lot of information, and so things get forgotten and stories don't get told like this one. So, in the early morning of June 1st, 1921, an armed white mob marched across the train tracks in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and into the predominantly Black Greenwood District, a thriving, affluent neighborhood known as America's Black Wall Street. In a few short hours, they'd razed 35 square blocks to the ground, leaving hundreds dead. The Tulsa Race Massacre is one of the most devastating acts of racial violence in U.S. history. But how did it come to pass, and why are the events unknown to so many of us today? It is these questions that award-winning author Brandy Colbert seeks to answer in this searing nonfiction account of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Through this examination, a portrait is drawn of an event singular in its devastation, but not in its kind. It is part of a legacy of white violence that can be traced from our country's earliest days through the Reconstruction era, the civil rights movement in the mid-20th century, and the fight for justice and accountability Black Americans still face today. The Tulsa Race Massacre has long failed to fit into the story Americans like to tell themselves about the history of their country. This book, in turn ambitious and intimate, explores the ways in which the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre is the story of America, and by showing us who we are, points to a way forward. And so this book is really eye-opening, really amazing, and it covers a lot of information. So it builds up to talking about the massacre by getting into the history of the state of Oklahoma, how it came to be, talking about Native American history, the history of slavery and the migration of Black Americans after the Civil War and emancipation, getting into like the history of like racist groups in America, like the KKK, and kind of like giving all this background and showing how like all of these things are coming together in this moment when like tensions within the city of Tulsa have like built up and spill over into this horrific event. So yeah, it's got a lot of groundwork leading up to it, and then covers the event, and then you get the aftermath, and then the legacy, like how this event has been like for a long time forgotten, and like actively, like people are actively like suppressing the knowledge, not wanting people to talk about it or teach about it, and then how the story has like, you know, resurfaced and even like made its way into some popular culture, like TV shows and things. So I definitely recommend checking this out. You know, like I'm not a big nonfiction reader, but I'm going to start reading more nonfiction because books like this just really fill in those gaps in like what you may have been taught in school, what you maybe haven't heard about just on your own, doing your own like reading and research. So yes, I do highly recommend this. Okay, my other nonfiction book I read is Claudette, Colvin, Twice Toward Justice, and this one, like we've had it in our nonfiction collection for quite some time. I believe it came out in 2009, but I just had never read it. And so this one, I'm going to read you like the little summary. So it starts with a quote. "When it comes to justice, there is no easy way to get it. You can't sugarcoat it. You just have to take a stand and say, this is not right." And that's a quote from Claudette Colvin. My words. On March 2nd, 1955, a slim, bespectacled teenager refused to give up her seat to a white woman on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Shouting, "It's my constitutional right," as police dragged her off to jail, Claudette Colvin decided she'd had enough of the Jim Crow segregation laws that had angered and puzzled her since she was a young child. But instead of being celebrated as Rosa Parks would be when she took the same stand 9 months later, Claudette found herself shunned by many of her classmates and dismissed as an unfit role model by the black leaders of Montgomery. Undaunted, she put her life in danger a year later when she dared to challenge segregation yet again as one of 4 plaintiffs in the landmark busing case Browder v. Gale. Based on extensive interviews with Claudette Colvin and many others, Phillip Hoose presents the first in-depth account of a major yet little-known civil rights figure whose story provides a fresh perspective on the Montgomery bus protest of 1955 through 56. Historic figures like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks play important roles, but center stage belongs to the brave, bookish girl whose 2 acts of courage were to affect the course of American history. So yeah, this was also a great read. So this gives you information about Claudette's like life, like her childhood growing up, and then like her family moving to Montgomery, and also gives you information about the Jim Crow laws, racism, and segregation in the South, particularly in Montgomery, and particularly involving the busing system. And you know, this story, it was so impactful because it was one, again, that I hadn't heard of, because, you know, when I was in school learning about the civil rights movement, you know, you do hear about Rosa Parks, but it's not like you're given tons and tons of detail about what went down. So this book just really was eye-opening because you're hearing about a 15-year-old teenager who was really the first one to stand up and refuse to like give up her seat and to actually be like dragged into jail and arrested and treated as an adult. And then to hear, like, to read about her story and finding out, like, you know, initially she did get, you know, support. People in her community were thinking, like, all right, right on, like, you were so brave, you were doing what so many of us wanted to do but didn't do. And then kind of how, well, I don't want to give, like, all the story away, but it's definitely, it's such a good story, and so well told. I keep saying story, but this is history. This is like what actually happened, and you know, reading about Claudette's life and what she went through at the time. Just, she was incredibly brave, incredibly passionate, and wanting to be, you know, totally involved in this movement to find justice and to, you know, desegregate the buses in Montgomery, and, you know, thinking about like how she was one of the 4 plaintiffs in the case that ended up overturning this segregation on buses, and like, yeah, you don't really know any of that. Like, well, I didn't know any of that, and so it was great. It was like such a good read, and I highly recommend it. It's not very long, and there are also lots of pictures. So if you're like, you know, if you struggle with nonfiction, don't be intimidated, because, yeah, like you have pages like from news articles and other things. Highly recommend getting this. Okay, now moving on into some fiction. I didn't really plan it this way, but my first 3 books are novels in verse. This is like novels, stories, long stories told through like poetry. And when I was telling someone about this, they were like, "Oh, you mean like The Highwaymen," which is kind of like this like ballad, and I'm like, not exactly. But if you never read a novel in verse, please check these out. They are all really good and very different. So first up, this is actually nonfiction, like memoir type. It's the story of Amyra León called Concrete Kids. And this is, I'll just read you the little introduction. Concrete Kids is an exploration of love and loss, melody and bloodshed. Musician, playwright, and educator Amyra León takes on a poetic journey through her childhood in Harlem as she navigates the intricacies of foster care, mourning, self-love, and resilience. In her signature free verse style, she invites us all to dream with abandon and to recognize what a privilege it is to dream at all. And I read this Friday, and it's just so moving, and I just want to read some of it to y'all, but I just recommend you come get it and read it. I'm trying to find like a good, so like if you've never read poetry in verse, like this is some of how it's formatted. Like part of the poetry is not just the words, it's how the words are on the page. It's finding this rhythm as you read it. And like I read it to myself, but I would say, you know, try reading it out loud and really feel the words. So I'll just read a part of the first part. It says, "This is for the concrete kids, kids with a melanin kiss, kids drenched in poverty, the kids who are told to cut their hair to tame their tone, the kids who are told to shorten their names and disappear their tongues, the kids who are told they will amount to nothing, the kids who are told they are problematic, the smart kids who are told they are problematic, the problematic kids who are told they are stupid, the kids who are taking care of their families in between extracurriculars, the kids who cannot go to extracurriculars because they are taking care of their families, the stoop kids, the hungry kids, the thirsty kids, the foster kids, the kids who aged out of the system, the missing kids, the homeless kids, the kids in jail, the kids awaiting trial, the innocent kids, the kids who never got to be kids, the kids navigating the violence of hands, the kids who are being taught to fear themselves, the kids who refuse, the kids in gangs, the kids thinking about joining gangs, the kids who started them, the adults they became, the adults who wait for the blood to dry out in the sun with the laundry, the kids who bury the adults who bury the kids, the angels they became, the angels they will become. More specifically, this is for the boy in the white tee and the breath I saw escape him. So, I just will try to read this one. These books are pretty heavy, I'll just say. So, like, read them and then maybe take a break. Go read, like, a fluffy book. That's what I do if I read stuff or just kind of get overwhelmed. And I was trying to think of some, like, books by Black authors that are just kind of like, feel-good books. Because that's one thing I've seen talked about within, like, the Black author community is, like, we do need books that are about, like, these really important topics, like racism and police brutality and, Black history and stuff, but we also need, like, books that are about Black joy. And so I was trying to think about some authors who I feel like really do a good job, like, bringing that joy. I really like Julian Winters. He's actually a Georgia author. I like his books a lot. And Leah Johnson is another one who her books also bring me a lot of joy. So I'm kind of like, reading through these, then taking a break and then coming back and, like, reflecting on them. So up next we have A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. As you can see, this has got a lot of awards. And I have read quite a few Jason Reynolds books. I haven't read all of them, but I've read most of them. And he is, like, an amazing author and poet, so definitely check him out if you haven't. But as far as we have another one of his books, Poetry for Everyone, up there. So this one, it says 60 seconds, 7 floors, 3 rules, 1 gun. Will's older brother Sean has been shot dead. Will feels a sadness so great he can't explain it. But in his neighborhood, there are the rules. Number 1, crying. Don't, no matter what. Number 2, snitching. Don't, no matter what. Number 3, revenge. Do, no matter what. But bullets miss. You can get the wrong guy, and there's always someone else who knows to follow the rules. And not really a spoiler, but in this book, Will has decided he's going to get revenge for his brother, and he gets in the elevator with that intent to go out and find the person he believes killed his brother and kill him. But as the elevator descends floor by floor, he's joined by ghosts of people he knows from his life who were killed, or in some cases had also killed someone, and is, like, hearing, like, their story, and it's kind of like each of them is challenging him, like, what are you planning to do, and why do you think this is the person who killed your brother, and so on. And it's just, it's incredible. And this is another one that, you've got the format of the words on the page, and yeah. So that's just kind of like an overview. It's hard for me to sometimes talk about novels in verse because I'm like, they're all so good. They moved me. They got me in my feels and, like, expanded my brain. But yes, definitely check this out. I just feel like, yeah, novels in verse, they're just a different way of like communicating a story, and they really do get your brain stretching because you've got to, yeah, kind of encompass like all these different things. Like it's not just, it's not obviously the same layout as a novel, so I don't know. There's a lot going on in novels in verse, and I feel like, they're short, they're quick, so you can definitely reread them easily and kind of try and soak it all up. So this one made me cry. It's Me, Moth by Amber McBride, and I'll just read you the summary. So, Moth has lost her family in an accident. Although she lives with her aunt, she feels alone and uprooted. That is until she meets Sonny, a boy who is also searching for his roots. If he knows more about where he comes from, maybe he'll be able to understand his ongoing depression. And if Moth can help him feel grounded, perhaps she too will uncover the history she carries in her bones. Moth and Sonny take a road trip that has them chasing ghosts and searching for ancestors. Both separately and together, they embark on a journey that is surprising, powerful, and unforgettable. Here's an exquisite and uplifting novel about identity, first love, and the ways in which our memories and our roots steer us through the universe. So, this made me cry in the middle of the night. And I'm just like, I need to reread this. I also need to see if it's an audiobook because I would like to listen to it as well. But it's, of the 3 novels in verse, it was probably my favorite. The imagery is just very beautiful. And there's a lot going on here, about family, about grief, and processing loss, and processing abuse and neglect, loneliness, and kind of like what it feels like to find somebody who you truly connect with, and want to build a relationship with, and covers things like communication and trust and openness, and it just delves into all of these things and is really beautifully told, and man, it just got me, and like I can't really tell you why, but you're gonna have to read it. Just read it. That's all I gotta say. Read it and then come talk to me, and then go tell your friends to read it, and they can tell their friends to read it. It's amazing. So yes, highly recommend. And there's also a road trip, which I love, and goes from Virginia to New Mexico. So, and then those are what I have read, and I'm just gonna say briefly that I'm currently reading By Any Means Necessary by Candice Montgomery, and this is a novel, and I picked it because, I've had this on my to-read list for a while, and partly it's because I love this cover so much. It just looks like, I don't know, it's just giving me good vibes. And bees, I like bees. So this one, I'll just read you the little summary. On the day Tori moves and officially becomes a college freshman, he gets a call that might force him to drop out before he's even made it through orientation. The bank is foreclosing on the bee farm his Uncle Miles left him. Tori's worked hard to become the first member of his family to go to college, but while the neighborhood held him back emotionally, Uncle Miles encouraged him to reach his full potential. For years, it was just the two of them tending the farm, so Tori can't let someone erase his uncle's legacy without a fight. He tries balancing his old life in LA with his new classes, new friends, and sort of new boyfriend in San Francisco. But as the farm heads for auction, the pressure of juggling everything threatens to tear him apart. Can he make a choice between his family and his future without sacrificing part of himself. So, yes, I kind of picked this up and was like, I don't know why. I feel like this is going to be fluffy. And right now I'm like, this is very stressful. I'm like that far into the book. But I'm enjoying it. Like, I really like Tori's narration and his like point of view, and I'm liking all of his new college friends he's meeting. Very frustrated with some of the people in his life, but I've got my fingers crossed. I really hope everything works out. So yeah, those are the book picks for this week, and definitely check out the list of Black authors and come check out some of the books, not only in February, but all through the year. But yeah, this is a good place to get started. So yeah, I will see you all next time. Bye!